Part 47. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 499. ID Con 1678346. Chopper said while eating the cake, "Really?" Usopp continued, "Of course that's not all. Captain Usopp also accidentally saved a Navy warship with one hand." Usopp gushed over his glorious deeds. Just as dinner was being held on the deck of the Discovery. Above the sky, Leo, who had already transformed into a seagull form, spread his wings and flew. Only the moon and stars shine in the dark night. But it's not a problem for Leo at all. The eyes of seagulls can also clearly distinguish objects on the sea below at night. Behind Leo were 4 huge seagulls. These 4 are the king seagulls invited by Leo. A king seagull can reach more than meters with its wings spread. These great king gulls are actually 4 brothers. They used to be giant seabirds that lived in windless areas and fed on sea kings. But Leo found them once, and there was a conflict. But Leo won the approval of the 4 brothers of the king seagull with his strong ability and the spirit of defending the seagull race. They also went to live on the cliffs above Seagull Island, the great route where Leo was. In the past, many ships traveling on the sea area of the Great Route were attacked by Leo, and the 4 brothers King Seagull often helped. They hunt and kill humans, and Leo seizes various weapons and supplies on the ship. This time Leo personally invited them to go out together. The 4 King Seagull brothers were furious when they heard that seagulls were being slaughtered and even used as food. Together with Leo, they attacked the Discovery and everyone. But they didn't come empty-handed. Many heavy bombs were tied to the torsos of the 4 King Seagull brothers. 30 heavy bombs are strapped to the torso of each great King Seagull. The shape of these heavy bombs is exactly the same as the heavy bombs used by Leo during the daytime raid on the Discovery. The King Seagulls are carrying heavy bombs and are preparing to attack the Discovery under the guidance of Leo. Leo himself only carried 4 bombs. He's mostly guiding and revenge this time around. "I must destroy these stinky humans," Leo said fiercely. After continuous flying, Leo and the King Seagulls finally flew to the sea area where the Discovery was. In the sea below, the Discovery rover is sailing. Although it was already night, Leo and the King Seagulls could still clearly see the Discovery below. Leo's piercing eyes saw a faint burst of fire on the deck of the Great Sea Explorer below. "Damn it, so many seagulls have been killed. How dare you eat dinner comfortably like this?" "But, you will soon feel what terror is," Leo said. Leo took the lead and flew towards the Discovery below. The King Seagulls also followed, but they flew higher. Leo flew above the Discovery and aimed at the front of the deck. That's where Rog and Sauron had their dinner. "Suffer death, bastards." Leo aimed at the deck and dropped 2 heavy bombs first. 2 heavy bombs hit the deck. Everyone who was dining on the deck was talking and laughing. At this moment, Rog, Sauron, and the King of Ninjas felt something was wrong. A dangerous breath approached. Sauron's sense is especially strong. Zoro and the Ninja King suddenly looked up, and saw 2 heavy bombs falling down. Although the moonlight and starlight were dim, the 2 of them could still see the 2 heavy bombs. Seeing this, Zoro said in a bad way, "Oh no, quickly find a way to deflect the bomb." Roger quickly took out a rattan whip. "Quickly infuse fruit power into it." "Vine whip." "Super vine net." Rog used the plant fruit ability to interweave the vine whip repeatedly, turning it into a huge net. A huge net covered the upper deck and quickly rushed towards the top. When the 2 heavy bombs were only more than 10 meters away from the deck, they were caught by the huge super rattan net. "Okay, let's go." Zoro and the Ninja King took the opportunity to jump up quickly, and each grabbed one side of the super vine net. The 2 of them worked hard together. The super vine net and the 2 heavy bombs inside were thrown into the sea on the left side of the Discovery deck. After the 2 heavy bombs were dropped, they exploded quickly. Boom rumble rumble. 2 explosions sounded, and the water column actually splashed dozens of meters high. Everyone on the deck was terrified. Usopp was so scared that he lay on the deck. Chopper was so scared that he hid behind Luffy. Luffy also exclaimed at the huge splash of water. "Wow, that's so cool. Rog, Zoro, the king of ninjas. Is this a show performed by the three of you?" Luffy said excitedly. Rog and Saran both said helplessly, "What? We were attacked." The Ninja King was also shocked for a while, and then quickly looked around. Now suddenly attacked, no one but Leo. And the heavy bomb used just now was also used by Leo. Usopp immediately stood up and looked around and at the night sky. "Oh my god, look at it," Usopp said, pointing his finger at the sky. Everyone looked up at the night sky. "I saw a shadow like a seagull in the sky. This shadow is in the sky above Discovery. But judging by the appearance, there is no doubt that it is Leo." But what really terrified and surprised everyone was that there were 4 huge seabird-like things flying in the higher sky. What's going on?" Usopp said in surprise. "I'm afraid we have more than one enemy," Rog said. "There are a lot of monsters too," Luffy said. In the night sky, the 2 heavy bombs that Leo dropped first were successfully blocked. "Why is this happening?" Leo said in surprise. On the deck of the Explorer below, Rog looked at the terrifying shadows in the night sky. "If you are fighting on deck or on land, you are not afraid of anything. But worst of all, the enemy is in the sky. The enemy is using the sky advantage to attack here." At this time, the goddess of spring water said, "Let me try it." The goddess of spring suddenly used an iron axe. She held up the iron axe and whispered a magic spell in her mouth. Around the iron axe creates wind, and then there is a storm. After forming a storm, the goddess of springs shot the storm at the top of the huge sails of the Discovery's main mast. Under the action of this powerful storm, the Discovery speeded up and sailed forward. "Wow, that's fast," Luffy shouted. "It's so exciting," Usopp said. Nami shouted, "It's so scary." Sanji quickly rushed to the helm of the Discovery and began to steer. "Ladies, don't worry, the boat won't deviate with me," Sanji said. Sanji worked hard to control the rudder, allowing the meteor warship to stabilize its direction and continue moving forward. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee R. A Dream. Chapter 500. ID Con 1678355. But after more than 10 seconds, Discovery slowed down again. When Rog saw the idea of the goddess of springs, he suddenly had a clever idea. "By the way, everyone, we now need strong winds to allow us to move quickly. Even for a short period of time. If we can continue to maintain this kind of wind, then the ship can continue to leave the sea quickly," Rog said. Usopp said, "Your idea is good. But how can we leave here quickly? Even the goddess of spring water cannot sustain such a continuous wind for a long time." Rog also felt a bit of a headache immediately. He said, "This is also." The goddess of spring water said to everyone, "I will do my best to ensure that the ship can move quickly. The situation is urgent now, and we still need to avoid the attacks of those enemies at night." But Rog had another idea in his mind, and said, "Then let's do this. Hold on, I'll quickly transform a plant weapon." "Go ahead and do it," Sanji said. Just like that, everyone on the Discovery started to act urgently. Although the goddess of springs cannot maintain wind power for a long time, she can create storms every once in a while. This, coupled with Sanji's timely change of direction, greatly enhanced the irregularity of Discovery's driving. During this precious time, Rog quickly used almost all the power of the plant fruit to quickly transform the plant weapon. What was transformed by Rog was a sapling. Rog's whole body was glowing with green light, and the sapling in his hand was quickly transformed. Leo in the sky also noticed something was wrong with the Discovery. "This huge meteor warship actually keeps moving like this. Leo decided to let the king seagulls take part in the battle. "Everyone, it's time for you to show your power," Leo said. The 4 king seagull brothers chirped for a while, and then they started to move. The 4 king gulls began to lower their altitude and bombard the Discovery below. They dropped heavy bombs one after another. These bombs tore through the air and fell on the Discovery below. But just as the heavy bombs were about to hit the Explorer, the sails of the Explorer accelerated because of the storm created by the goddess of springs. Actually avoided these heavy bombs. In this way, in the continuous battle, more than 10 heavy bombs thrown by the king seagulls were all dodged. Heavy bombs fell into the sea. The explosion splashed a string of water jets. Discovery is still sailing. And in addition to accelerating, it also changes direction irregularly from left to right. On board the Discovery, Fountain works hard to create storms. But this consumes a lot of mana. The others were also very nervous. Usopp, Chopper, and Luffy were shaken and bumped on the deck. Roger is desperately transforming the saplings. Even though the surrounding world was shaking, Rog concentrated his energy. "Okay," Roger said. Roger completed the transformation of the sapling. Roger didn't say much, but arranged the saplings. It then grows rapidly. After growing, a huge opening was opened at the top of the sapling. In other words, the tree is already a chimney. Rog continued to use the plant fruit power. Misty tree. A large amount of mist is constantly pouring out from the top of the mist tree. At this time, the exhausted goddess of spring also looked at Rog. Groups of fog spread rapidly and blocked the top of the Discovery. The surrounding area of Discovery is also blocked. And this huge fog is still expanding. Leo and the king seagulls in the sky were shocked. Leo looked at the huge fog pouring out of Discovery. What's going on?" Leo said in disbelief. "Swarms of mist form the mist. Shroud Discovery. The scope of the fog is enough to obscure more than a dozen warships or a fleet. In this case, bombing becomes extremely difficult. Leo and the king seagull have excellent eyesight, though. But it is also impossible to see the objects in the fog." On the deck of the Discovery, Rog was also exhausted after controlling the fog tree to spray out a large amount of fog. "It's finally okay," Rog breathed a sigh of relief. The desperate use of plant fruit power just now has exhausted Rog. After Rog completed the transformation, he manipulated the fog tree to generate so much fog. The Discovery is protected by this fog. Now Rog is exhausted. Usopp looked at the fog above and around him and said, "I see." Luffy said in disbelief, "It looks interesting, but what is the purpose of all this fog?" Usopp said helplessly, "In this way, the enemy can't see us clearly, so they can't attack." Sanji looked at the surrounding fog and said, "It is indeed a good idea. It is difficult for the enemy to drop bombs to hit us. They have no way to judge." Sauron looked around and said, "This method is not bad." The goddess of spring water was also freed from the tired frequent casting of magic. "This way we can take a breather," said the goddess of spring water. Now after going through the tension, the large amount of mist poured out of Rog's mist tree was finally used to form a huge sea mist, allowing everyone to take a breather. And another point is that although these fogs are huge, Rog's fog trees continue to replenish the fog, allowing these fogs to be maintained for a long time. After taking a short rest, Rog asked Nami again, "Nami, take a look at what the weather will be like around you." Nami said, "Okay." As the navigator of the Straw Hat Pirates, Nami knows a lot about the weather. She can tell which direction the weather is going to change around her by the temperature, the direction of the wind, and the behavior of the waves and everything around her. Nami began to judge the surrounding weather conditions. With such a fright just now, everyone was gearing up. Chopper looked at the surrounding fog, although he knew that the enemy could not attack because of the fog. But this little guy is still full of fear in his heart. Now because of the fog, it is safe for the time being. Rog also continued to rest. As long as the fog remains, there is no need to worry about discovery being discovered. These fogs act as a barrier for discovery. Luffy looked around, and the fog had already acted as a huge barrier. Suddenly Luffy's stomach growled. "Sanji, I'm hungry again," Luffy said to Sanji. Sanji immediately said helplessly, "Is your stomach a bottomless pit?" Chopper looked at the sky and the surroundings, only to see a thick fog covering the surroundings. "I can finally feel more at ease," Chopper said. "Anyway, at least I can feel at ease for a while." After a while of judging the weather, Nami finally came to a conclusion. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 501. ID Con 1679193. The Kick security forces flew towards the 5 security forces like cannonballs. Boom. After being hit by this human shell, 5 security forces were knocked into the air. Although it wasn't a real cannonball, the speed and impact of this human cannonball were no weaker than real cannonballs. This human shell knocked down 5 security forces. Sanji continued to fight fiercely with the security forces with his powerful foot skills. Robin here is showing a strong assassination ability. Robin's ability to blossom and fruit is to grow arms on enemies or objects, so that these arms can be used for assassination. With these arms, Robin killed the security forces one by one. 2 arms grew out of the vigilantes' necks, turning their heads back. These vigilantes died with their necks broken. Or a pair of arms would grow from the waists of the security forces, pulling out the fuses from the grenades on their waists. Then the security forces were blown to pieces of flesh and blood in the explosion. Nami also holds a special pistol in her hand, and keeps shooting and killing security forces in the dark. In the battle to retake the super turret on the left front, Robin exerted his greatest power. Robin's flowering fruit ability actually wiped out most enemies in this environment. Robin eliminated more than security forces guarding the super fort. Sanji killed over 30 of them. Nami killed several. After a fierce battle between the 3 of them, the left front fort was finally taken back. It's now in the rear right turret of the sea dock. The goddess of spring water and the king of ninjas are fighting fiercely here. At the beginning of the passage leading to the super fort, the goddess of springs used ice pucks to freeze the security forces into ice cubes. The 2 quickly rushed into the super fort. The interior of the turret is divided into 3 layers. The bottom layer is the power room, which is responsible for adjusting the rotation and aiming direction of the entire super turret. There is a huge mechanical shaft here, which can be used to adjust the steering of the entire turret. After entering here from the entrance, the Ninja King and the Spring Goddess immediately saw more than a dozen enemies here. These enemies found that someone had entered here, and they fired violently with submachine guns, shotguns, and grenade guns. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Boom 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 boom. Bullets and grenades shot out violently. The figure of the Ninja King left like a ghost. The goddess of spring had already used the iron axe in advance to create the wind shield. The wind shield blocks the bullets and grenades. The goddess of spring still stood calmly behind the wind shield. Wind shield helped her resist all damage. What happened? The wind actually blocked our attack. Just when the security forces were shocked. After the Ninja King reached their side, he threw more than a dozen shurikens with both hands in a row with his ghostly footwork. The shurikens hit the necks of these security forces. These security forces all twitched in pain for a while, and then fell to the ground. The Spring Goddess looked at the Ninja King standing beside them, and said, "Your assassination technique is really unparalleled in the world." Hearing the compliment, the Ninja King said modestly, "Thank you for the compliment." Originally, assassination was the strong point of the Ninja King. It can be said that it is very easy for the King of Ninja to assassinate these security forces with his own ability. After clearing out the enemies in the power room on the first floor, the Ninja King and the Spring Goddess continued to advance to the next floor. On the second floor is the ammunition room of the super turret. The heavy artillery shells transported from the ammunition depot deep in the offshore dock are placed here and then transported to the fire room on the upper level. The ammunition room was guarded by more than 20 security officers and soldiers. As soon as they saw the Goddess of Spring Water and the King of Ninjas attacking here, they immediately picked up their guns and started fighting. While maintaining the wind shield with an iron axe, the Spring Goddess took out a silver axe. She chanted a spell lightly, and frost appeared around the silver axe, and then ice and snow formed. After the ice and snow were formed, a bunch of ice cones were transformed. There are dozens of these ice cones, all of which are as sharp as daggers. Ice. 1,000 cones. These ice picks were fired at the security forces. A vigilante was firing a submachine gun, and an ice pick pierced his eye socket. The sharp ice pick penetrated the eyeball and pierced the skull. The security guard fell down quickly, and shot a few times indiscriminately with the submachine gun in his hand. The security forces were shot through the eye sockets or through the throat by the ice picks. Just as the Goddess of Spring wiped out a large number of security forces, the Ninja King also brandished a ninja sword to kill the security forces one by one. The more than security forces in the ammunition room were also quickly eliminated. The King of Ninjas and the Goddess of Springs continued to the fire room on the top floor. In the firepower room on the top floor, there were more than 30 security forces guarding it. The firepower room is the command headquarters of the entire super fort. This is where the 3 cannons are aimed and loaded, and orders are given to the ammunition and power chambers below. After a fierce battle, the Ninja King and the Spring Goddess finally succeeded in destroying the remnants of the enemy and captured the super fort. The super fort on the right rear side of the offshore dock was also captured. Now only the super battery on the left rear of the sea dock is left. This super fort was taken back by Luffy and Chopper. At the super fort at the rear left, Luffy used his rubber power to eject Chopper and defeat the security forces guarding the entrance, and then the two of them rushed into the super fort together. Wow, knocked them away. Luffy rushed into the power room at the bottom of the fort. There is only a huge rotating shaft inside, and there are more than 10 security forces guarding it. Rubber. Tracking gun. Luffy stretched out his hands and changed direction to attack the enemy in the middle. Chopper retains his human form and continues to change into other forms. Jump enhancement. Chopper physically strengthened his legs, and his legs quickly became very strong. With strong legs, Chopper jumps and attacks in this powerhouse. Luffy and Chopper quickly eliminated all the enemies here with their powerful combat power. Then the two went to the ammunition room on the upper floor together. After arriving at the ammunition room on the upper level, I saw more than 30 enemies guarding it. Okay, now it's more powerful. Luffy clenched his fists and wanted to fight hard. Luffy rushed to the side of a vigilante, his arms stretched out quickly and wrapped him around him. "You, what are you going to do?" the security guard said in horror. "I need a partner," Luffy said excitedly. This vigilante was manipulated by Luffy like a puppet. Rubber. Robot ally. Luffy manipulated the vigilante like a robot. Pirate plant fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 502. ID Con 1679218. Luffy looked at the corpse of the King Seagull on the Discovery again. Luffy said to Sanji, "Sanji, prepare to cook this giant seagull." Sanji looked at King Seagull and said, "It's really a glutton. But I should work hard to cook for the ladies." Thinking of this, Sanji immediately fell into extreme joy. But cutting such a huge king seagull still needs help. Sanji then said to the others, "I need someone to cut it. You guys can help too." "Okay," everyone said. Rog, Saran, and the King of Ninja came forward to help. Because Luffy is too clumsy, Sanji just asks him to help with some sundries. Rog took out the great iron birch sword and swung it to cut the King Seagull. Of course, it goes without saying that Sauron and the King of Ninjas are the same. In particular, Sauron's cutting of the body of the King Seagull can be said to be surprisingly efficient. After seeing Zoro's astonishing efficiency, Sanji also praised, Green Algae Head is really a good helper. After cutting off the head, tail, and claws of the King Seagull, they threw it into the sea. The remaining feathers are plucked out, but these seagull feathers are huge and can be used to make some items. The remaining body of the seagull became 2 huge seagull legs, 2 huge seagull wings, and the torso of the seagull that was cut into several large pieces. The seagull meat was transported back to the cabin kitchen below. Although the upper deck of the Discovery was severely damaged, many of the deeper cabins below were still intact. The galley is in the deeper cabin. In the cabin, Sanji was cooking enthusiastically. Others also serve as help cooks. Sanji sang while preparing the condiments. La 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 Sanji, the top chef, cooked a delicious seagull dinner. Miss Nami was happy, the girls couldn't smile from ear to ear. Robin, that's when I fell in love with Sanji. Sauron, who was helping the cook here, snorted disdainfully after hearing this. Rog and Usopp were not surprised and continued to work. At this moment, footsteps came. It turned out that Nami and Robin had arrived in the kitchen. Sanji looked at the two of them and said with a smile, "Ah, Miss Nami, Sister Robin, you are here." Nami said, "Ah, it's Robin who thinks you're working hard. Wants to help. So I'm here too." Robin looked at Sanji and said, "I'm sorry for making you work so hard." Sanji immediately said respectfully, "No matter how hard a gentleman should work for a lady, he should work hard without any hesitation." When saying this, Sanji also turned his body and made a gesture of love. Robin said, "I'll do some work anyway." Sanji said, "Miss Robin is so persistent, then you should join too." Robin walked over to a pile of dishes. "I used to squeeze in a lot of plates, bowls, and cups that needed to be washed." Robin stood before the dishes and cutlery that needed to be washed. 8 round flowers. Blooming. Robin crossed his arms and finally activated his flowering fruit ability. Suddenly 8 arms grew from Robin's body. The 8 arms then started in 4 pairs and started washing the plates and cutlery. Nami praised, "Robin, your method is really efficient." Robin said, "It's a small thing." Nami also started to help. But she soon acted like a conductor, directing everyone how to work. Nami is sometimes more of a real captain than Luffy. The kitchen is lively, and everyone is working together. It's afternoon again. Near the bow deck under the setting sun, everyone enjoyed dinner together. This time on the dining table, amazingly huge seagull meat was served. "It's so delicious," Usopp said as he wolfed down the food. "Bah, haha, it's delicious," Luffy said with his mouth full of food. Luffy also felt that there was not enough food on the plate in front of him, so he often stretched out his rubber arms to eat meat from the plate in front of other people. Sanji said dissatisfiedly, "Really, you are a glutton." Robin also smiled lightly after seeing Luffy eating. Sanji quickly said to Robin with a loving face, "Get used to it. Luffy here is very greedy. So don't eat too slowly." Roger and Chopper also ate seagull sandwiches and drank special drinks together. Of course, how could there be no ice cubes on this feast? Before dinner, the goddess of springs used magic to create enough ice cubes for everyone to enjoy. Zoro and the Ninja King drank ice-cold rum and ate grilled seagull steaks. The meat on the King Seagull's body is so huge that it doesn't take much effort to pick out the bones. Except for Robin and a few other ladies present, everyone else was munching on the food. Laughter filled the deck of the Discovery. After the feast, everyone rested leisurely on the deck. "Okay, would you like to drink some coconut juice after dinner?" Rog asked. Want to? Usopp, Luffy, and Chopper yelled. Roger took a flower pot and put the coconut seeds modified with plant fruits into the flower pot. Rog pressed his hand on the flower pot to activate the plant fruit ability. A coconut tree grows rapidly in a flower pot. Wow, that's so cool, Chopper said. I saw that after the coconut tree grew up, dozens of coconuts appeared on it. Roger patted the coconut tree, and 2 coconuts fell from it. Okay, if you want to drink, come and get it. I have prepared straws here, Rog said. I want to drink. I want to drink too. And I. Luffy, Usopp, and Chopper rushed over together. The coconuts are removed and slits are made with a knife. Various seasonings can be added to it according to the taste, such as ice cubes, milk, sugar cubes, chocolate and so on. Wow, it tastes good, Luffy said. I like it with milk. It's good to drink something light after a meal. Usopp added milk to his coconut. Chopper sucks on a coconut in his hand. It's delicious, I like chocolate coconut milk, Chopper said happily. Roger added sugar cubes to the coconut he drank. Well, it's not bad. Next time I will consider directly transforming the coconut itself with sugar or milk flavor, Rog said. Hearing this, both Chopper and Usopp's eyes lit up. That's great, save the milk. I want to drink natural milk and coconut milk, Usopp said longingly. I want to drink chocolate coconut milk, Chopper said obsessively. Rog looked at them and said, I will find a way to reform. Zoro and the Ninja King were not interested in coconut water and continued to drink ice-cold rum. Sanji was very loving and offered his prepared coconut milk to Robin, Nami, and the Spring Goddess. Thank you so much, Sanji. You are so attentive, Robin said politely. Thank you, Sanji, said the Spring Goddess. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 503. ID Con 1679716. The goddess of spring water showed her might in this battle. She used all 3 axes together, showing great power. The goddess of springs uttered ancient magic spells, and manipulated the golden axe, silver axe, and iron axe together to produce magical effects. Sparks appeared around the golden axe and then flames formed. Frost formed around the silver axe, forming ice. Wind force appeared around the iron axe, forming a wind vortex. Fire. Ice. Wind Hell reincarnation. The goddess of springs releases the 3 magical powers gathered together. Flames, ice, and wind attack the security forces in a large area. This comprehensive magic attack has a large range, but is not good against strong enemies. However, it can be said that it is more than enough to deal with these security forces. Groups of security forces saw flames flying towards them. Flames covered their bodies. Very hot. The security forces howled in pain. However, the flame didn't last long, and stopped in less than 10 seconds. The security forces were burned and suffered many injuries. But then another blizzard came. The blizzard was so violent that their burned bodies froze again. So cold. I'm freezing to death. The blizzard stopped after 10 seconds. Then came another violent wind. This is not just an ordinary wind force, the wind itself is extremely powerful, and the security forces are blown by this powerful wind force, as if they were cut by daggers. It hurts me. This wind lasted for 10 seconds and then stopped. During this period, many security forces suffered such a huge blow, and they simply fell on the deck or were killed or injured. However, there are still many security forces who survived. Great, it's finally over. Although these security forces were wounded all over, they were finally alive after the catastrophe. For them, however, the horror did not end. A wide range of flames covered these surviving security forces again. These vigilantes are in pain again. This is the fire, ice, and wind hell reincarnation of the spring goddess. The large-scale attack makes the enemy repeatedly suffer from fire, ice, and wind. The enemy was repeatedly killed and wounded, and eventually fell to the ground. This is the cycle that will not stop until the opponent dies. Usopp also served as a sharpshooter during the battle, and any security forces who attempted to attack others who threatened others were shot and killed by him. Nami also used the pistol with a scope given by Usopp to shoot and kill the enemy. Chopper is always on guard to prevent other enemies from attacking Nami and Usopp. After all, Chopper is still very powerful in hand-to-hand combat. Mont Blanc Kulik fought hard with the three giants of apes and orangutans. All three are masters in hand-to-hand combat. Together, the three of them knocked down the security forces one by one with their fists and kicks. Under the hard work of everyone, the 200 security forces on the top deck were quickly wiped out. Commander Gloucester's corps commanded here now saw the utter annihilation of the two corps. How could this happen? Commander Croster said in horror and frustration. The 2nd Legion of the Security Army, which was still alive and well when they landed at the offshore dock not long ago, is now about to be completely destroyed. He is already about to become a polished commander. At this moment, the giant wooden hand controlled by Rog clenched into a huge fist and struck. Boom! This punch sent Gloucester and the 7 officers and soldiers around him flying together. They flew out of the vast deck of the offshore dock and fell into the sea in the distance. After another period of fighting, the crowd completely wiped out the remnants of the enemy. After clearing the enemies, Mont Blanc Kulik looked around and said, "We have regained control of the maritime dock." He turned his attention to the security fleets around the offshore dock and even in the distance. "But we didn't really win," Mont Blanc Kulik said. "Now there is a huge fleet of security forces around the sea dock. Although the elite 2nd Army in the landing operation was completely destroyed. However, there are 8 heavy warships, 30 light warships, and a powerful security force fleet composed of 15 landing ships are still operating around the offshore dock." Rog said to Mont Blanc Kulik, "Then how should we fight next?" Mont Blanc Kulik looked at the 4 super turrets around the offshore dock. "We will use these super turrets to deal with the enemy," Mont Blanc Kulik said. The 4 super turrets in the sea dock are powerful weapons used by the Ape Mountain United Army to counter the fleet of the security forces. Although the command room of the sea dock was severely damaged, this behemoth at sea was temporarily unable to move. However, the super turrets with 3 super cannons distributed in the 4 corners of the sea dock are powerful weapons enough to suppress some enemies in the nearby sea area. In fact, when the 2nd Army Corps that landed was eliminated, the fate of these security force fleets was decided. The biggest support of the sea dock is the 4 super forts. These super turrets are capable of destroying warships that come within range with their powerful triple super cannons. Mont Blanc Kulik ordered the surviving crew to rush into the 4 super forts and prepare for battle. The right front super turret, the left front super turret, the right rear super turret, and the left rear super turret were quickly entered by the crew of the Saruyama United Army to prepare for battle. The crew entered the super turret, whether it was the power room, the ammunition room, or the fire room were full of people. Mont Blanc Kulik was standing on the top deck listening to the report from the phone bug. "Report to the commander, the super battery on the right front is ready." "Report to commander, the super fort on the left front is ready." "Report to the commander, the super battery on the right rear is ready." "Report to the commander, the super battery on the left rear is ready." Mont Blanc Kulik then used the phone bug to order the entire army, "All wait for the battle." He then turned to look at Rog and Sauron. "Okay, everyone. Later we will see how the enemy is eliminated," Mont Blanc Kulik said in a calm tone. Rog looked at the super turrets and said, "Are we going to use those turrets to deal with the enemy?" Usopp said with great anticipation, "It must be spectacular when the cannon is fired like that." Luffy said excitedly, "Wow, I want to see it." Everyone is looking forward to the super artillery firing from the super fort. Mont Blanc Kulik and the others continued to observe the situation of the security forces fleet around the offshore dock. The security force fleet has now lost contact with the 2nd Army Corps, and the 15 landing ships that were originally near the sea dock have distanced themselves. More than light warships also surrounded the offshore dock from all sides. 8 heavy warships lined up in the distance. No matter what, the fleet of the security army is still very powerful. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 504. ID Con 1679721. After observing the current situation, Mont Blanc Couric gave new orders to the phone bug after thinking about it. The right front super turret and the left front super turret both give priority to attacking heavy warships in the distance. The right rear super turret and left rear super turret attack the surrounding light warships and landing ships. Soon the 4 super forts received a reply. Super fort on the right front, orders received. The super battery on the left front, received the order. The super battery on the right rear, received the order. The super battery on the left rear, received the order. All 4 super turrets have received orders. The super turret on the right front and the super turret on the left front are responsible for long-range bombardment of 8 heavy warships. The super turret on the right rear and the super turret on the left rear are responsible for destroying light warships and landing ships. Among the super turrets on the right front. Inside the firepower room on the top floor. Aim at the rightmost one of the 8 heavy warships. 3 super cannons are ready to be loaded. Command the power room to rotate the turret to the direction of 2 o'clock. Command the ammunition room to send heavy armor-piercing shells upward. The officer in charge of commanding here said. The order was quickly conveyed. In the power room at the bottom of the super turret on the right front. The crew members manipulated the huge rotating shaft here to start turning. This huge rotating shaft rotates in the opposite direction towards 2 o'clock. Inside the middle ammunition layer. The crew here began to place heavy armor-piercing shells with a diameter of 2 meters through the lifting tower and sent them to the fire room above. 3 consecutive heavy armor-piercing shells were sent through the lifting tower to the fire room above. In the firepower room, the crew loaded 3 heavy armor-piercing shells into the barrels of the 3 super artillery from the rear. Then the crew adjusted the 3 super artillery to aim at the heavy warship on the far right. The super turret on the right front is loaded with shells and ready to attack. The super turret on the front left is also loaded with shells, but this super turret is aimed at the heavy warship on the far left. In addition to these 2 super turrets, the super turret on the right rear and the super turret on the left rear were also loaded with shells and aimed at the security forces warships near the offshore dock. The 3 2-meter diameter and 20-meter long cannon barrels on the super fort are aimed at the target and may fire devastating shells at any time. At this time, he was on the Emperor warship among the 8 heavy warships of the security force. The Chief of Staff of the security force contacted Gloucester, the Chief of the 2nd Army, with a phone bug, but there was no response. How could this be? There really is no one left in the 2nd Legion, said the Chief of Staff of the Security Army. The situation in the offshore dock is very unclear now. Whether it was the 4 killer brothers who were dispatched or the 2nd Army that landed later, they lost contact. He looked towards the offshore dock. Don't know what the situation is now. Chief of Staff, you see those forts seem to be turning. An officer said quickly. I saw the super turrets on the right front and left front of the sea dock were turning. Especially the super turret on the right front, the black muzzles of the 3 super artillery were aimed at the positions of the heavy warships. How could this happen? Could it be that they even took back the super fort, said the Chief of Staff of the Security Army. At this time, the Chief of Staff of the security force was extremely disturbed and fearful. They have seen the power of the offshore dock before. But that time was when the former owner of the sea dock, a pirate captain, commanded the sea dock. Inside the super fort on the right front of the sea dock, The officer commanding here gave the order to fire. Fire! The gunners in charge of the 3 super cannons pulled the mechanical levers. The muzzles at the front ends of the 3 super artillery barrels flashed 3 flames at the same time. The 3 flames were extremely dazzling, even more dazzling than lightning. The huge barrels of the 3 super artillery trembled violently. Boom! There was a thunderous cannon that shook the sea and the sky. 3 heavy armor-piercing shells flew towards the rightmost heavy warship. The officers and soldiers on this heavy warship have not yet recovered from the shock of the gunfire just now. 3 heavy armor-piercing shells have already hit the heavy warship. Boom! The steel and high-quality timber hull of this heavy warship was pierced by 3 heavy armor-piercing shells. 3 heavy armor-piercing shells penetrated the solid hull and exploded violently inside the hull. Even the arsenal of this heavy warship was detonated. The heavy warship began to explode violently. The entire heavy warship was engulfed in flames and smoke. After receiving such damage, the heavy warship quickly sank into the rolling waves. At this time, the chief of staff of the security force, who was on the 3rd heavy warship from the left, the Emperor, jumped up in fright after seeing it. Such a powerful destructive power! He said in shock. Although we have seen the super forts at sea docks fire before, at that time they were only bombarding land. It was the first time he had seen what would happen if he hit the warship. Just one volley was enough to destroy a heavy warship. Boom! Just when the chief of staff of the security force and a large number of officers and soldiers hadn't woken up from the shock. The super fort on the left front of the offshore dock also opened fire. 3 heavy armor-piercing shells were also fired on the leftmost heavy warship. The strong hull made of steel and high-quality wood cannot withstand the damage of these heavy armor-piercing shells. A violent explosion engulfed the heavy warship. What? Help! Run away! The officers and soldiers on the leftmost heavy warship jumped into the sea desperately to escape. Because this heavy warship did not detonate its arsenal like the destroyed one on the far right, it was able to continue to support it for a while under such severely damaged conditions. But in this way, the inner deck and outer deck of this heavy warship are also in flames, and the huge mast is also down. The huge canvas also became a flammable object for the raging fire. It can be said that this heavy warship has become a burning fireship and has completely lost its combat effectiveness. The security forces originally had 10 heavy warships, but now they have lost 4, which can be said to be a huge loss. The Gaia Knight and Patroness, which were sunk before, were killed in the sea after intensive heavy fire attacks and destruction. But now it's just a salvo of the triple-mounted super artillery of the super turret in the sea dock that can destroy a heavy warship. These super cannons are surprisingly powerful. Each is a super guerrilla cannon that is far more powerful than the previous Yuten probe. The chief of staff of the security forces on the deck of the Emperor saw this horrible sight. He was trembling all over. With the super turrets in the sea dock, none of their fleets may be able to escape. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 505. ID Con 1680571. 2 heavy warships were destroyed one after another, and the security forces on the warships began to become chaotic. Oh my God, such terrible destructive power. I'm afraid we are no match. They're not shelling, they're clearly firing lightning. Under the devastating destructive power of the super turret in the sea dock, there was a moment of panic among the security forces. The chief of staff of the security army turned pale at first, but then recovered a little. He looked at the sea and the huge sea dock. If you escape now, you will definitely not be able to escape. The range of the triple-mounted super artillery on those super turrets can be said to be very far. Since you can't escape, you might as well fight with your back. The chief of staff of the security forces picked up the phone bug and began issuing orders. The entire fleet obeys the order. Our army is now within the firing range of the enemy's super artillery. Escape is impossible, so we have to fight to the death. I ordered the entire fleet to attack the sea docks, and especially try to destroy the 4 super artillery. The order of the Chief of Staff of the security force was quickly conveyed to all warships of the entire fleet through the phone bug. Although many originally panicked security officers and soldiers were surprised by the decision of the Chief of Staff of the security force, after thinking about it carefully, there is really no other way out but this. With the powerful attack range of these 4 super turrets in this maritime dock, the sea area of this generation is completely covered. Even if he tried to escape by force, he couldn't escape too far. So it's better to fight with your back. In fact, the offshore docks cannot be moved now. As long as the 4 super turrets are destroyed, the crisis can be saved. It's all about death, it's better to fight hard. Soon the Chief of Staff of the Security Army received replies from each warship. The Great Axe received orders. The Lance received orders. The Conch received the order. The Hammer received the order. The Oracles received orders. Indomitus received orders. The Chief of Staff of the Security Forces received replies from various warships. There are still 6 heavy warships, 30 light warships, 15 landing ships, and a total attack force of 51 main warships. The security force fleet has to fight to the death with the Sarasima United Army. After the super turret on the right front and the super turret on the left front of the offshore dock attacked the heavy warship. The super turret at the right rear of the sea dock and the super turret at the left rear also attacked light warships and landing ships. The super turret on the right rear aimed at a light warship hundreds of meters away from the sea dock. Boom! 3 heavy armor-piercing shells were fired at the light warship. After the light warship was hit, the steel and hardwood of the hull were pierced, and then exploded violently. Not even the hulls of heavy warships could withstand such devastating shells. Not to mention this kind of light warship. The light warship broke into several sections and sank to the bottom of the sea. The super turret on the left rear aimed at a landing ship. Boom! The huge super artillery fired 3 surprisingly powerful heavy armor-piercing shells. The hull structure of the landing ship is larger than that of a light warship, and because it is designed and manufactured for landing operations, it is even more difficult to resist these powerful shells. Boom 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 boom. The hull of the landing ship exploded violently, and then overturned towards the side of the hull opposite to the side where the bullet was hit. This landing ship also sank to the bottom of the sea. On the top deck of the sea dock, Roger, Usopp, and Mont Blanc Kulik were watching the battle. The powerful firepower of the super artillery on the super turret made everyone feel deeply shocked for a while. What a powerful artillery piece this is! Usopp said in shock. Wow, so cool! Luffy said excitedly. It's just a crush. Sanji said with a shocked expression. The power of these artillery is so powerful. Roger said in shock. I feel sorry for the enemy. The little guy Chopper also said in shock. But in this way, we must win. On the contrary, Nami said with some joy. It is precisely because of these 4 extremely powerful super turrets that the maritime dock has hope of victory. With the powerful triple-mounted super artillery of the super forts, the offshore dock is enough to send the powerful fleet of the security forces to the bottom of the sea. Although the fleet of the security army is huge, the super artillery range of these super forts can cover all of them. Even if these security warships quickly accelerated their escape, they could not escape the fate of being sunk. Luffy said, I want to go take a look. He extended his arms and grabbed the top of the right front super turret. Then Luffy shortened his arms and pulled his body forward. Luffy reached the top of the super turret. Standing here, Luffy looked around. Originally, the line of sight on the top deck is very wide, and it is even more exaggerated here. From here you can overlook the surrounding sea. The warships of the security forces on the sea can be seen in a panoramic view. What a broad view! Come up, too! Luffy yelled at Roger and Sanji. Rog looked at the super fort. But Rog looked at the super fort on the left front of the offshore dock. I'll go take a look at that super fort, Roger said and walked over at the same time. Usopp, let's go to a super fort too, Chopper said to Usopp. Okay, let's also go to the super fort on the left front, Usopp said. The two also quickly followed Rog. Rog, Usopp, and Chopper walked towards the super fort on the left front of the sea dock. Sanji looked at these super turrets, and then at Nami. He suddenly had a good idea in his mind. Miss Nami, let's go to the top of a super fort together. How about going there to see the scenery? Sanji said to Nami politely. Nami swallowed after hearing this, and said in disgust, don't have such thoughts. Sanji thought so. Once Nami reaches the top of the super fortress, she will definitely be very scared. At that time, Sanji can protect Nami as a gentleman, fully demonstrating the gentleman's demeanor and chivalry. Sanji continued to persuade, Miss Nami, don't worry. The gentleman will protect you. Nami walked away in disgust, waved her hand and said, no way, no way. At this time, Robin said, I'd rather go up and have a look. Sanji immediately turned his head, looking at Robin with love and admiration. As expected of Miss Robin, you have such courage, Sanji said admiringly. At this time, the spring water goddess also said, I also want to take a look. I can use levitation magic to help everyone go up. Is there anyone else who wants to take a look? The Ninja King said, count me in. But I can go up by myself without any problem. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 506. ID Con 1680574. Sanji looked excitedly at the goddess of spring water and said, you really deserve to be my goddess. You are so brave. Nami looked at Robin and the goddess of spring water, and said with an ugly expression, who are these people? Sanji looked at the four super forts in the offshore dock, and his eyes were fixed on the super fort at the rear right. Sister Robin, goddess. Let's go to the super fort with the rest of us and watch, Sanji said. Sanji and Robin walked towards the super fort at the right rear of the sea dock together. Now there are only Nami and Sauron, Mont Blanc Kurik, and the apes and orangutans left here. Boss, let's also go to the top of a super fort, the orangutan said with great interest. I want to see it too, the orangutan said excitedly. Mont Blanc Kurik looked at the two excited little brothers. Really, haven't you seen it before? Now you are so excited. But we really need to observe our surroundings better. Mont Blanc Kulik implicitly agreed to do this. Okay, let's go, said the orangutan. Go to the super fort at the rear left, the orangutan said. Mont Blanc Kulik, the orangutan, and the orangutan went to the super fort at the left rear of the sea dock. Now only Nami and Zoro are left here. Nami looked around in frustration, and finally her eyes fell on Zoro. You must be going too, right? Nami said frustratedly. Zoro was lying on the deck on the top deck. He supported his head with his arms, yawned and said, I didn't expect that guy, King of Ninjas, to enjoy watching the show as much as curly eyebrows. But I want to sleep for a while. Nami's dejected face quickly became brighter. That's great, Nami said happily. On the top of the four super turrets in the offshore dock, there are people on it. It is really shocking to watch the vast sea from here. Luffy is standing on the top of the super turret on the right front, watching the many security forces warships on the sea from here. It's so cool. Luffy shouted happily. Rog, Usopp, and Chopper are on the top of the super turret in front left. The three stood here looking at the vast sea. The warships of the security forces were sailing on the sea. However, the three huge super cannons in front of the super fort looked down on all enemies. This place is really vast, Rog said with emotion. It's spectacular, Chopper said in shock. Usopp stood at the front, posing exaggeratedly like a brave sea warrior. Captain Usopp is going to lead everyone to destroy the enemy's fleet today, Usopp said ambitiously. Under such circumstances, Usopp said with great vigor. At first glance, I really thought he was a general commanding everything. On top of the super turret at the rear right of the sea dock. Sanji and Robin and the goddess of springs and the king of ninjas are here together. Robin looked at the vast sea and the warships of the security force. Well, what a battle. Even Alabasta has never seen such a fierce naval battle, Robin said with emotion. The goddess of spring looked at the sea and the fleet of the security forces, and said, but I'm afraid they won't be the opponents of the sea dock. More precisely, they won't be the opponents of these super turrets. The Ninja King was silent. Sanji looked at the warships of the security force and said, two ladies, please rest assured. There is a gentleman here, and he will protect you to the death. On top of the super turret at the rear left of the sea dock. Mont Blanc Kulik, the orangutans all looked at the vast sea and the security forces warships. It's really spectacular. Especially this time we are fighting against a strong enemy, said the orangutan. Bomb them to death later, said the orangutan. This was a super brutal battle. I see that since the enemy did not escape, they obviously want to fight back. Mont Blanc Kulik said earnestly. The security force fleet surrounding the offshore dock is now all ready for battle. The heavy artillery of the heavy warship is loaded. The light warship's flat-firing cannon has also been loaded. The landing ship's self-defense artillery has also been loaded. Regardless of their firepower, these warships aimed their guns at the super turrets they could shoot. Boom 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 boom. Heavy warships, light warships, and landing ships are all firing. The dense shells fired at the 4 super turrets in the offshore dock at a very high speed. The 4 super turrets in the offshore dock were bombarded by intensive firepower. On the right front above the super turret, Luffy saw the incoming shells. Some hit the super turret, but some were going to fall to the top of the super turret. Rubber dot balloon. Luffy inhaled violently, inflating himself into a giant rubber balloon. 3 shells hit Luffy's body. Luffy flicked the cannonball away. However, the strength of the rebound is still limited, and it cannot hit the warships of the security forces. The 3 shells that bounced back fell into the sea. These 3 shells splashed huge waves in the sea. But more shells still hit the super fort. Even if Luffy turned into a rubber balloon, he couldn't bounce back so many shells. Moreover, the explosive impact of many shells threw Luffy away instead. What? Luffy was thrown away by the impact of the explosion after the shell hit the super turret. On the top deck of the offshore dock, Nami was shocked when she saw the super fort being bombarded. How could this happen? Nami said in shock. Hulu, Hulu. Saran was still lying on the deck and snoring. The sound of gunfire around him was deafening, but it failed to wake him up. At this moment, Luffy, who was thrown away, flew over and hit Saran all at once. Azaro shouted in pain. But Luffy stood up and said, "Fortunately, we landed successfully." On top of the super turret on the front left, Rog, Chopper, and Usopp also saw countless cannonballs flying over. Usopp, who was originally looking heroic, saw these shells but was so frightened that he quickly ran behind Rog. Seeing this situation, Rog quickly used the plant fruit power of his whole body. Quickly put on the walnut armor again, and at the same time, the giant wooden hand at the front of the stake on the right arm began to grow rapidly. Boom 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 boom. The dense shells hit the super fort under the feet of the 3 of them. Rog's giant wooden hand has finally grown to the point where it can crush a yak to death. Rog directly blocked the 3 people with his giant wooden hand. Several cannonballs hit the hand of the giant wood. Even the hand of the giant tree was almost torn apart by the huge impact. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 507. ID Con 1681174. The hand of the giant tree trembled violently after being hit by the shells. This huge arm grown from trees was severely damaged by the impact and explosive force of the shells. What a powerful explosive force! Rog also tried to resist the attack and said. Usopp and Chopper were so frightened that their expressions changed. What a terrifying power! Usopp said in shock. Scared me to death, Chopper cried. However, the artillery shells fired by the warships of the security forces kept flying over, and even the hand of the giant tree could not resist for a long time. The hand of the giant wood was hit by continuous shells, and finally turned into pieces. After receiving this major impact, Rog, Usopp, and Chopper were also thrown away by the impact of the shell hitting the top of the super turret. What? Usopp and Chopper yelled in pain. At this time, Chopper quickly stuffed a Rambo ball into his mouth, and then his body changed shape. Fur strengthening. The fur on Chopper's body expanded rapidly and turned into a huge fluffy ball. Rog grabs Usopp. Boom. Roger's back hit the top deck heavily. Chopper, which had turned into a giant furball, fell fluffily onto the top deck. Usopp was still struggling in Rog's arms, shouting in pain, "I was thrown to death." Roger let it go. Usopp opened his eyes, looked around, and gasped happily. He saw Rog barely standing up again, and said, "Thank you very much." Roger stood up, his whole body was covered with walnut armor. The walnut armor effectively protected Rog's body. Rog looked around and said, "We have been attacked so violently. They actually decided to attack here." Usopp looked at the shells that were still flying over. Except most of them hit the 4 super turrets, some hit the top deck of the offshore dock. "Are they crazy?" Usopp said in shock. All the security warships were firing desperately. It's in the super turret at the back right of the sea dock. This super fort also suffered a great attack. A dense swarm of artillery shells hit the fort. On the top of the turret, Sanji, Robin, the goddess of spring and the king of ninjas saw the cannonballs flying towards them. "You bastard, didn't you see Sister Robin and the spring water goddess are here?" Sanji jumped up and kicked away a cannonball. The goddess of spring quickly used the iron axe, and whispered the ancient magic spell in her mouth. A 10-meter diameter wind vortex formed in front of the 4 people. This is the gigantic wind shield. The shells hit the wind shield and exploded violently on it. But the goddess of spring water was sweating all over her face. "Everyone, please get down quickly. Maintaining such a huge wind shield requires an amazing amount of magical power," the spring goddess said to Sanji and the others. Robin looked under the super turret, and she quickly folded her hands. 30 rounds of flowers. Ladder. A row of ladders formed by arms appeared on the side of the super turret. The goddess of spring reluctantly maintained the wind shield for a while, and then hurried down as well. Then the top of the super turret was covered by shells. The security warships used a variety of artillery to try every means to destroy these super forts. The top of the super turret at the rear left of the sea dock. As dense artillery shells flew over, Mont Blanc, Kulik, the orangutan and the orangutan all jumped off the top of the super fort. After falling back to the top deck, the orangutan looked at the super turret that was exploding. Although these shells could not destroy the super fort, they shrouded the fort in terrifying explosion flames and gunpowder smoke. "It's scary," the orangutan said. "Boss, just now you predicted that these security army warships would attack. Why did you predict like this?" the orangutan asked. Mont Blanc Kulik said earnestly, "Because people will fight to the death when they must die. If a person has a way to survive, he will find a way to escape, but if he doesn't even have a way to survive, he simply fights the enemy desperately." Mont Blanc Kulik understood this, which is why he believed that the security forces fleet would fight to the death. The security fleet now uses powerful artillery to hit and bombard the 4 super forts fiercely. Of course, The 4 super turrets themselves are made of steel and special alloys. It is not so easy to be easily destroyed. However, under the bombardment of dense artillery shells, especially the heavy artillery of heavy warships, some of the shells of the super turrets began to dent. After a long time, these super forts cannot withstand the fierce shelling. Mont Blanc Kulik hurriedly shouted to everyone, "We must find a way to destroy those warships faster. Otherwise, even these 4 super turrets will not be able to withstand the bombardment of these shells." Everyone understands what to do now. Sauron quickly walked to the side of the top deck of the sea dock. He unsheathed all 3 katana swords. Sauron held Hideo Yizawan in his mouth, his right hand clenched Gish, and his left hand clenched Swezu. Sauron quickly jumped down from the side of the top deck of the offshore dock into the sea below. Sauron swam in the middle of the sea in order to sneak up on these vigilante warships. The King of Ninjas also jumped into the sea to sneak attack these security forces warships. Roger and Chopper act together. At this time, the crew of the Saruyama United Army also went to the deck to support the battle. They brought up a large number of shells. "Okay, let's use the giant wooden hand to fire the shells," Rog said. "Okay, I'll help you," Chopper said. "And us," said the crew of the Saruyama Alliance. Rog used the power of the plant fruit to make the hand of the giant tree grow huge again. The regrown giant wooden hand caught one of the cannonballs brought by Chopper and the crew. Rog observed the situation of the security forces warships on the sea. He gripped the cannonball like a baseball player. "A sure hit. Giant wooden pitcher." Rog improvised a move name. At the same time, the hand of the giant tree also threw the cannonball. The shell hit a landing ship. The shell hit the center of the landing ship's hull and penetrated the hull. In the end, the captain and senior officers inside were killed together. The landing ship suffered a heavy blow and lost its combat effectiveness and became a mess. "Well cast," Chopper said happily. Rog was also surprised by his own throw. Of course, this time the throw was played very well. "Okay, keep coming." Rog continued to use the giant wooden hand to attack. But the next step is not so good. It often takes more shells to make a security force warship lose its combat effectiveness. But these shells also made the security forces warships one after another lose their combat effectiveness. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 508. ID Con 1681235. Of course, Rog's most efficient battle is to destroy the landing ship. The hull defense of these warships, needless to say those heavy warships, even light warships, are far inferior. Rog used throwing cannonballs to severely damage the landing ships one after another. Usopp and some crew members of the Ape Mountain United Army used the flat-fire artillery they brought up to bombard the enemy. Although these flat-firing cannons say that the shells have a caliber of only centimeters, they fire very fast. Can be used to penetrate hulls. Usopp is also a super marksman, and with the help of other crew members, he can attack enemy light warships efficiently. Aiming, Usopp aimed the flat-fire cannon at the fire room on the side of the hull of a light warship. Usopp now aimed the flat-fire gun at the enemy ship's fire room. Fire! Usopp pulled the cord of the flat gun. Boom! There was a sound of a cannon, and the CM armor-piercing shell of the flat-fire gun shot past. The shell hit the enemy ship's fire room. And it shot in through a window in the firepower room. In this way, the shell still has the force needed to penetrate the hull. After the enemy ship's firepower room was shot in by the shell, it caused a violent explosion. The explosion also affected the shells in this fire room. Because there are a large number of shells piled up in the firepower room equipped with a row of guns. Boom, 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 boom. The chain explosion completely turned the firepower room into a sea of flames. This 50-meter-long light warship also turned into a sea of flames. The crew next to Usopp were shocked. They all opened their mouths wide and couldn't close them. How could it be so powerful? Hit it too accurately. You don't need instruments to measure to be so accurate. What a sharpshooter. The crew members were very happy to praise Usopp. Seeing the results of his battle, Usopp breathed a sigh of relief but pretended to be natural. No big deal, please continue to help me load the cannonballs. Usopp said like a battle-experienced marksman. Okay. The crew members worked hard to help the flat-firing gun operated by Usopp to quickly load new shells. The goddess of springs stands on the side of the top deck. She used powerful ancient magic to attack the vigilante warship. The nymph raised the silver axe. She murmured an ancient magic spell softly. Frost appeared around the silver axe, and then snow and ice. In the end, a puck the size of a wooden barrel was formed. This hockey puck is bigger than before, and its power is naturally greater. Go hockey! The goddess of springs manipulated and shot the huge ice ball formed on the silver axe. The huge puck hits a light warship. After the outer hull of this light warship was hit by a huge ice ball, an amazing ice and snow explosion occurred. The light warship was covered with a layer of ice. The security forces in this light warship were quickly placed in the ice cellar. The light warship also lost its direction. It moved with the waves on the sea, and finally collided with another light warship. Both light warships had their hulls damaged and began to sink into the rolling waves of the sea. Some crew members of the Ape Mountain United Army were shocked when they saw such a powerful magical power of the goddess of spring water. Could this be the magic in the legend? Too strong. It's incredible. The enemy's warship was actually frozen. This is even more shocking than the super fort firing. The crew of the Ape Mountain United Army have also seen some tragic battle scenes on weekdays. But it was the first time they saw a battle using magic. The goddess of spring also continued to use the silver axe and ice magic. Because ice can seal enemy warships, it can be said that it is very difficult for fire and wind to destroy the hull made of steel and hardwood in this case. Sanji uses his feet to kick the shells away, hitting the enemy warships like a parabola. Although the lethality is limited, it is also a considerable damage and disturbance to the enemy warship. With the help of the apes and orangutans, Luffy shoots the shells out like a giant slingshot. It's been stretched long enough this time, said the orangutan. There are so many shells. The opponent can become a beehive, said the orangutan. Luffy's feet were stuck on two wooden piles on the top deck of the offshore dock, and his hands were holding more than a dozen cannonballs. His body was separated by more than 100 meters between the ape and the orangutan. Okay, it's the limit, Luffy said. After targeting a light warship, the ape and orangutan were also ready to let go. 1, 2, 3, launch. The ape and the orangutan let go at the same time. Luffy's body suddenly bounced in the target direction. More than a dozen shells were ejected. The security officers and soldiers on the light warship only saw a group of artillery shells flying over. But they couldn't help but change their direction to avoid it. More than a dozen shells hit the light warship. Boom 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 boom. There was a violent explosion on the light warship for a while. The light warship turned into a sea of flames. Great. Luffy cheered with the ape and orangutan. Keep coming, Luffy said. Okay, said the ape and orangutan. Nami is helping to guide and direct the shells needed everywhere. Robin's flowering and fruiting ability is very powerful, but it needs to be in a relatively short distance to be effective. Now these security warships are far away and difficult to play their role. So Robin didn't stay idle, but used his flowering fruit ability to create a lot of arms on the ground to help carry the shells. The crew of the Ape Mountain United Army tried their best to move the shells in the arsenal of the sea dock to it. Except for the heavy shells used by the 4 super turrets, the other shells can be used by everyone. Mont Blanc Kulak kept in touch with the 4 super turrets. He also conducted command based on battlefield conditions. However, if everyone on the top deck fought bravely, the killing effect would be far inferior to the 4 super turrets. These 4 were violently attacked, but still strong super forts are the real magic weapon for the Sea Dock to destroy the security forces fleet. According to the threat of the enemy, the super turrets give priority to attacking heavy warships. However, the super turret itself also has its disadvantages, that is, it takes a lot of time to fire every time. In a super fort, after a judgment is made in the topmost fire room, the order is conveyed to the ammunition room in the middle and the power room at the bottom. The power room will turn the heavy super gun made of heavy steel and special alloy, the ammunition room will lift up the heavy 2-meter diameter heavy armor-piercing shell, and then the firepower room itself will load 3 heavy armor-piercing shells into the super gun. In the barrel. After aiming, the official fire was fired.